Sinister fringe I see on Rita. There has been in the last weeks in particular, and definitely since the protests in Jobestown on Saturday, a very concerted attempt by the government, by the establishment parties, and by a large section of the media, obviously driven in particular by that section of the media owned by Dennis O'Brien, which has a vested interest in undermining the anti-water charges movement. And that conscious campaign is to denigrate peaceful protesters, to denigrate the hundreds of people of Dail and of Jobestown who came out to protest on Saturday expressing their anger against Joan Burton. And what's very interesting is that they've had this campaign going on for days, non-stop. Front page of the Daily Mail yesterday, Evening Herald yesterday, programme after programme after programme, demonising protesters. But what's very interesting is that it's not working, right? We've reached such a stage whereby people know not to trust a large section of the media anymore. People know to trust their own experiences because people are out and mobilised. When people are out and mobilised, they base themselves on what they know themselves, what they see from people they trust on social media, from talking to them, rather than believing what they hear from the media. And so their attempts to divide this movement are not working at all, because people know that people are right to be angry, people are right to protest, and people are right to shout their opposition against the likes of Joan Burton. Yesterday in the Dail and today the media have been asking me to apologise to Joan Burton. I told them very clearly that I have nothing whatsoever to apologise for. I was involved in a peaceful protest. I was involved in a peaceful sit-down protest. I was involved in a peaceful slow march protest in front of Joan Burton's car. I have nothing to apologise for. The people who should be apologising is Joan Burton, is the Labour Party. The threat to democracy does not come from the so-called mob, masses of ordinary people getting involved in politics for the first time. The threat to democracy comes precisely from the likes of Joan Burton, from standing in elections, promising people one thing, as Pat Rabbit said, isn't that what you do in elections, and then doing the opposite when they get into power. And to be honest, that's the problem, fundamentally, why they're so outraged by what's happening on the north side of the city with massive protests against water meters, so outraged at what happened in Jobestown, is because what they consider to be the mob is getting involved in politics. James Connolly wrote an article where he said, all hail to the mob. He said the mob is the bringer of progress. And what he meant is that ordinary people, working class people, they're the ones who have won minimum wages, they're the ones who have won the right to vote, they're the ones who have won any decent rights in this society, come because the mass of people get involved. But the inheritors of that party, unfortunately, the betrayers of that party, they look upon those people as a mob, as something to be sneered about, because really only people should get involved in politics at the time of elections, vote for people who lie. But what's changed and what they don't take into account is that those people are now involved and are now active and have the power to force them back. So their stick, their demeaning of protester, the demonising of protesters won't work, and the baby carrot that they announced today in the Dail also will definitely not work. We're going to be able to organise if we take everybody who's actively opposed to water charges and we get them involved in an active, massive campaign, going door to door, talking to friends, talking to neighbours, spreading a message of confidence in place of the message of fear that will come from the government and the media. We'll be able to spread the message of non-payment, of a defiant boycott, and we'll be able to defeat these charges. There is one thing true in what the government says, what the media says, what Andy Kenny says. And it's when they say, oh, you know, it's very sinister. This is not just about water charges. These people have another agenda. Right, and that's true. Because people aren't angry only because of these water charges that they won't be able to afford and because of the future privatisation of water. It's because we've had 6 years of this. Accumulated attack upon attack, misery upon misery, heaped on people, in order to bail out the bankers, bail out the bondholders at a rate ongoing of €8 billion a year. But what's happened now is that working class people have discovered their own power. And so this is becoming more about just water charges. It's about the idea that we have enormous power. And that if we get organised, well yes, ministers can be detained in areas for a period of hours and forced to listen to people for a period of time. But also that odious charges and taxes can be defeated and governments can be forced to back down. But when we experience that, when we win on the water charges, are people going to go home? No. Are we not going to use our power to demand investment to build housing, to deal with the housing crisis? Are we not going to use our power to demand the nationalisation of our oil and gas resources? Are we not going to use our power to say an end to the running of our society for Dennis O'Brien? An end to the domination of our society by the bankers and the bondholders, and for rule in this society by the so-called mob, by working class people taking power, the 99%, into their own hands, reshaping our society, reshaping our economy in the interest of ordinary people as opposed to in the interest of the 1%. Thank you very much.